Talking about something called mirror work, which would be similar to like psychomantiums and that idea.
Yes.
Um, were these methods part of our culture going way back and maybe starting in Atlantean times
Yes.
or
It began in Atlantean times and progressed through Egyptian times and spread out to many other cultures in the early days of your civilizations. Yes.
and what is the benefit of working with those kinds of tools?
Well, again, like any permission slip, it taps into certain things where people have certain sensitivities to recognize that the idea of reflection, which is what a mirror symbolizes, puts you in touch with not only different aspects of your own consciousness, if you're willing to reflect on them and look with honesty in the reflections in mirrors to see your true self, but also can allow you to look beyond the physical realm as if the mirror is actually a window into the spirit world. Because it can function that way for certain aspects of your consciousness as well, and allow
There's some,
ease of communication with spirits.
so is there something with the subconscious mind that allows it to use it and it gets the
Yeah.
conscious mind out of the way in a sense? Is
Yes,
that
the sub and unconscious minds, which are higher versions closer to the idea of the higher mind. And therefore, yes, getting the conscious mind to relax and allow yourself to see through the looking glass, so to speak, as opposed to just seeing your own physical reflection, is what will allow it to sort of turn into a window into the higher mind realm, which is the realm of spirit, and thus make more ease of communication with spirits, if used that way, in the way it is described to be used in the darkness with a dim light, not seeing anything in the mirror other than a blank canvas, so to speak, like a wall. Thus, then getting your analytical mind to relax itself because there's nothing in the mirror to analyze except existence itself, presence itself. And so it becomes a window rather than a reflector.
you once mentioned that that your existence is very similar to being in a lucid dream
Yes.
for us.
Yes.
Okay, and that one of the keystone aspects of that is that you can see the symbols for what they are,
Yes.
as opposed to us, the symbols we see, and also because of our training, we think of them as solid. We think they mean one thing,
Yes.
like a chair, or whereas if you were to see a chair,
Yes.
what might that symbol represent?
A sensation of relaxed support.
So that's part of the evolution of consciousness also, is that we start to be able to see through the symbols that are presented to us.
And of course, they will change depending upon the circumstance and the situation. Again, similar to the idea of the permission slip you know as the tarot cards, because even though there may seem to be a so-called quote unquote fixed image on the card, there are many different attributes to that image, many different kinds of objects that are represented in any one of those cards. And for someone who is sensitive to that particular permission slip and can allow themselves to read them, different symbols at different time, depending upon the interaction of different people, will stand out to the reader in different ways than they have before, letting them know which aspect of the overall image is the most important to look at and what meaning that may bring with it relevant for the person they are reading for. So even a chair can represent different things. It can represent the concept of relaxed support. It can represent the concept of paying attention by staying in one spot and being educated by something, just as you have your own chairs and desks in school. It can represent many different kinds of things, depending on how many legs it has, how many backs it has, if it has any back at all. So again, even the symbol of the chair can shift according to what's going on at any given moment in anyone's consciousness that is choosing to use that symbol to represent the state of being they happen to be in at that moment.
And there's been questions about how you can achieve the same kind of effect without having to take a psychedelic or a plant medicine. And it seems like it's also connected with the idea of being able to see through symbols when you are in these altered states.
Yes.
Is there other ways of attaining those states of consciousness?
Of course. Of course. There are many different permission slips. The idea of channeling is one of them. Being in the channeling state in the brain allows for these kinds of perceptions.
Okay, and then even some of the things like drumming and
dancing, drumming.
meditation.
There are many different kinds, meditation, many different kinds of permission slips that generate certain states that will allow for these kinds of perceptions to seem more obvious and natural.
And whereas in a plant-based medicine experience, it may go on and on for hours.
Yes.
You can actually achieve the same thing simply by getting a download when you're in an altered state that you generate naturally.
Yes, of course.
And then it unspools within you so that you have recognition of the information you're receiving.
It unspools according to the time frame and the timing that is relevant for the person that has received the download, yes.
I see. Can all kinds of cats, including tigers and lions, can they see interdimensionals? I mean, and elementals and...
Yes, they don't always do it, but they all have the capacity, yes.
But is this something in domestic house cats that has been amplified?
Well, the idea of interacting with humans can amplify it. It can actually also dampen it. It just depends on who they're interacting with and why. Because the idea of humanity being connected to many different kinds of things, the cats can utilize a relationship with humans to magnify and amplify a reason for seeing particular elementals or particular spirits that might be relevant for the particular human that they're, as you say, hanging out with.
Which leads to the next question about zoo animals who are changed because they interact with humans and they deeply interact with human consciousness.
They can. They don't have to, but they can.
And they're in a situation where they're actually cared for very strongly. You know, there's a lot of concern about their well-being, enrichment, and all of these things. So how are we changing animal species and their abilities, I guess, psychically, by developing almost new species that have these kinds of experiences?
Well, again, like anything, it's a reflection of the evolution within your own consciousness. So you will form relationships or generate species that are more reflective of the level of consciousness that you're operating from.
So it's very interesting to watch them change, and the idea that animals can be friends with animals that heretofore would have been enemies.
Yes. It is to some degree not only a reflection of what we just said about the shifts in collective consciousness on your planet, but it is also to some degree the precursors of what we experience in our world about all animals being symbiotic instead of predatory.
So we're just seeing the early signs of that now.
Yes. Very early.
And our consciousness evolves.
Correct. And you become less predatory and more symbiotic as well.
Right.